Today in episode 28 of the podcast, we'll be discussing Sam Raimi returning to horror for the first time since 2009. We also have Redbox shutting down, closing for good. This was something that kind of ushered in the end of the big blockbusters and everything else. So it's interesting to see that it's coming to a close. We'll also be breaking down the 7th episode of The Acolyte and reviewing the film Fly Me to the Moon. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we get into our news this week, as we mentioned last week on the podcast, we have brand new merch. So Brad is modeling the Marvel style We'll Bring the Popcorn t-shirt, as well as the Deadpool and Wolverine style We'll Bring the Popcorn t-shirt. You can go to willbringthepopcorn.com/merch to check out that, as well as any other shirts and other merchandise that we have available for sale.
Yeah, I'm kind of just saying, if you wore these to Deadpool and Wolverine, you'd probably be very popular, look really good, and just, why don't you go check some out, buy you a couple, and support us, but also check out the movie. I actually wore one of these to Fly Me to the Moon, and one of the workers there really enjoyed the shirt and was getting the discussions going about Deadpool and Wolverine, so that was a lot of fun to see.
So to commemorate the release of these, we are doing another giveaway. So if you go to willbringthepopcorn.com/giveaway, you can find out how you can enter for a chance to win. Maybe you want a copy of this t-shirt or one of the other t-shirts we have available. You can win your choice of a t-shirt in any size and color you want, plus a $25 gift card to any movie theater that you frequent, whether it's AMC, Cinemark, Regal, any of the movie chains that you want to go to. Go to willbringthepopcorn.com/giveaway for how you can enter for a shot at that merch.
And to start off our news this week, we do unfortunately have several passings in the entertainment industry. So the first one was Shelley Duvall. She passed away at 75. Of course, The Shining was her biggest, kind of best known, but she's done a lot of roles. I'll always remember her also as Olive Oil to Robin Williams' Popeye in that film. Even though it wasn't the greatest film, she was Olive Oil, he was Popeye. But yeah, I think most everybody will always remember her from The Shining. And we offer our condolences and everything to her friends and family and everybody after her loss.
For sure. We also had the passing of Richard Simmons, who just a huge presence in the fitness community. He was on all of our TV sets, growing up, especially for us, late night TV shows, infomercials, all that sort. Huge advocate for fitness, also passed away. And we also had the passing of Shannon Doherty right as we were going to record this podcast today, who was obviously famous from Beverly Hills 90210 and Charmed, among many things. Had a really long fight with breast cancer, and unfortunately it eventually took her life at just the age of 53, which is very sad.
Yeah, it's sad to see at 53. Yeah, my wife loved Charmed. We both kind of watched 90210 back in the day. I was never a huge fan of it, but it was gigantic.
Huge show.
And even go back to Richard Simmons, I still vividly remember so many of his appearances on David Letterman, because those two just went at each other with sometimes maybe a little too mean-spirited, other times, depending on, it was hard to tell sometimes with Richard if he was acting along with it or if he was actually taking offense to it. But yeah, he was huge on TV when we, 90s, when we were growing up. And so, just our condolences to everybody, to all the friends and family of Shelley, of Shannon, and Richard. Just three kind of big stars just kind of gone.
Yeah, one of my favorite Richard Simmons moments, if I could jump in before we move on, he was on an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? And had one of the funniest scenes when they were having guest stars. He came out and he did a game with them, and it was the funniest scene, I think, in the history of that show. His
and Robin Williams are probably the two most memorable cameos that I can remember from Whose Line. They were just so hysterical on there.
Yeah, thoughts with the families as well for what a difficult week that was. And I know they say they come in threes, and we got them plus Dr. Ruth as well. So also wanted to give a little bit of light to that too. But kind of moving on to the news this week, we do have a big story coming out from Paramount. So Skydance is taking over Paramount in an $8 billion deal, and it's a huge merger. I know there's been some up and downs. We've talked about quite a bit on the podcast is what the future of Paramount's going to look like. This deal for a while felt like it was dead in the water, but it just came back through, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, it feels like just a week or two ago we heard National Amusements, who is a controlling group over the Paramount Group, killed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't happening. And then, all right, it's good to go. We're finalized. We're going with it. But you also think of like Skydance has been around for a while. It's a pretty big name, but you always feel like Paramount is kind of the bigger name to Skydance. But no, Skydance is taking over. So, there's going to be a new Paramount group that is formed from this with the CEO of Skydance taking over as the head of the new Paramount Group, and the Sherry Redstone, whose father kind of took over Viacom in the late 80s to start the Paramount Group. They're selling their entire stake, their family stake in it. So they're, that family, after almost 40 years, they're going to be completely gone out of Paramount.
It's crazy to see what this is going to look like. They said it's going to be closed officially by the summer of next year. So they got a year to kind of wrap everything up and kind of start to present it as this new group going forward. I kind of wonder what the future is going to look like for them, because, obviously they have the Paramount TV service that we've talked about, who's trying to find, is that merger with another streaming service still going to happen, or what's that going to look? It's the first time we've had a major film studio that owns a company like this. So what is that going to look like moving forward? I don't know.
Yeah, because I've already seen some discussion that their animation groups would be, merged together and brought together. Hopefully, we're not going to see a lot of layoffs or anything like that. But with a lot of these mergers, you do see redundancies because each side has their own team. So unfortunately, you're probably going to have some people losing their jobs. Hopefully, they can land somewhere. But yeah, the movie studios are kind of changing. We're seeing a lot of mergers, and you mentioned Max and Paramount are talking about, merging into one single streaming platform. Is Skydance still going to approve that, or is that something that was maybe a part of them buying it? Is that, all right, we're going to stick to this agreement or deal? Because we don't really know if anything's signed or anything like that. It's getting close, but we still got a year until it closes, so there's a lot that could change or be modified in between that time.
Yeah, and the fact that the deal's going through is a big deal to begin with. Like, it's the first deal of its kind like this in a while, where there's just so many questions of what it's going to look like, who all's going to be impacted. I know you talked about, people losing their jobs, unfortunately, like you said, when these mergers do happen. They kind of pick the best of the best and what they feel is the best of the best, maybe. And I think I'm fearful a little bit for the people who work for Paramount directly, because a lot of times the controlling interest will come in and put their people in place, and those people kind of fall by the wayside. You already see like you said, the owner of Viacom, like the controlling interest of that group, are stepping down after almost 40 years. So, they probably took a pretty sweet deal to make that happen. But there's a little bit of a ripple effect that's going to be felt that we don't know what that's going to look like yet. But, hopefully over the next year we get a little more information of what it's going to look like and see how it affects, not only the people that consume the content, but make it as well. So
yes, I think Disney and Fox was the last really big merger that we had go on, and we did see like the 20 studios kind of shut down and turned into something else, and so there was a lot of closures and mixtures and everything. So yeah, we've got a year of kind of info ahead of us to see exactly how this merger is going to play out.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Moving on to another story. So we have Nicolas Cage, doing press for Longlegs and everything, talking a little bit about Spider-Man Noir, which is now called Spider Noir. So kind of interesting to drop Spider-Man out of the name, just go Spider Noir. Maybe there was something with Sony or Marvel they didn't get worked out, or they just wanted to try to do something different. Because I also wondered if his Spider-Man is going to be Peter Parker, if it's going to be a different version, kind of separate itself. Because it's over on Amazon. It's not on a Sony streaming or anything on Disney Plus. It's over at Amazon. So it definitely could be some things that they have to change or want to change because of that. But he didn't mention it's going to be 8 episodes. Did mention it's going to have kind of a interesting art style and style to it overall, and also said that it's not going to be a huge action-packed series, which I kind of expected to be more detective or, looking back at those old 50s, 60s crime shows and stuff to be like that. But he did drop an interesting tidbit that there'll be monsters featured in it.
Yeah, that was an interesting development for that, because Marvel, for all the, heroes and villains stuff they don't delve a ton into monster lore as much, but the fact that they're throwing monsters into this, which doesn't really fit the noir aesthetic, I think, is going to be It's going to be an interesting wrinkle that they throw in there to kind of see if it stands out. You throw Nicolas Cage in anything, I'm gonna check it out because he's so fun. I know we're not reviewing it, but I actually just watched Longlegs as well, so I'm interested to see what his take on this, on this character is going to be. We've seen it in Into the Spider-Verse already, but now we're getting like its own show. It's supposed to be live action, right?
Yes, yeah. It's live action.
So we want to make that distinction too. He's playing his Spider-Man noir character, but it's not an animated series like Into the Spider-Verse, but it is going to be live action. So it's going to be interesting to see like the types of stories that they do tell with monsters. Is it going to be a crime drama? Like he says, it's not going to be as much of a action, wham bam fighting monsters necessarily, but more like solving monster crimes, which could be interesting.
Yeah, the main thing that popped to mind was Werewolf at Night that Marvel did with basically the monsters that they kind of have in the MCU. So it'd be interesting if we see some of those because it was set in the past as well. So could we potentially, even though it's not a Marvel production, could we see a tie to those characters at all?
I'd love for it to be all black and white too, which I think it's going to be.
I hope it is black or white or very dark, stylistic, and maybe little splashes of color, kind of like Sin City and stuff did. You could do something along that way, but yeah, I hope it keeps that kind of dark, black and white, old school aesthetic that should work really well. So we also did get some casting news. So Lamorne Morris, who's most everyone will know him from New Girl, he's been cast as Robbie Robertson. So that was a character that appeared in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Yes. Hasn't really been seen since then, so it's interesting that they're going to bring that character into the Spider Noir universe. And we also have Brendan Gleeson, who's been cast as a villain, so he's a really solid actor that could give something potentially pretty dark. Like he can play a very serious, dark, gritty role really well. So to have him in there as a villain is very intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon taking over this series gives me a little bit of confidence in the fact that it's going to be probably that edgier style just because of the programming that they do put out. I mean, they're killing it with, Reacher and The Boys and, just a lot of the series that they've been producing has been high quality and really good. So I'm confident that they're going to take the time and make this a really good show as well. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Oh, absolutely. We love Nicolas Cage, as you mentioned, into the Spider-Verse being that, and everyone's been clamoring for bring Spider-Man Noir back, and we're getting it.
I love it. I'm looking forward to that when it comes out for sure. Moving into another movie that had a one-off in 2006, but it's still like a big part of like pop culture references even to this day. You have Meryl Streep and Emily Blunt both coming back for a Devil Wears Prada sequel.
Yeah, I'll be 100% honest. I've never seen The Devil Wears Prada, but as you said, like it's been since 2006, but it's still everywhere. I hear jokes, I see memes. It's still kind of everywhere, and you do have kind of a powerhouse. That was early on in Anne Hathaway and Emily Blunt's career that really kind of helped them as well. So, but I mean, of course, you got the great Meryl Streep leading it up, and it seems like you've got. The screenwriter, Aline Brosh McKenna, the director, David Franklin. You got Anne Hathaway, Stanley Tucci, Emily Blunt, Meryl Streep. You've pretty much got everybody coming back for it. So, it has been a while, but we'll see how it ends up turning out and if fans of that movie end up enjoying the second one. I think there's slight bits of the story mentioned that, Meryl Streep's company and everything is kind of going downhill and Emily Blunt's company is on the rise, so she needs her. So there's going to be kind of a different power dynamic between the two, but we'll see if they turn out a good story to bring this back 18 years later.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. I'd be curious to see if they can update that story to reflect the world now, because there's a lot of fun possibilities in that movie. But yeah, it's kind of exciting because that was a pretty popular movie at the time. I have seen it. I did enjoy it. The fact that they're going back to it, there's some strong story possibilities. I think their cast, you're nailing if you have those four actors in. Like, they're all fantastic. So the fact that they're all coming back for this, I'm all for it.
Moving on to another one that, again, we've talked so much about how many remakes and things are being redone.
Everything.
No, we've had a few Westerns that have been redone, The Magnificent Seven and a few others, but now we got A Fistful of Dollars is in the works as a remake, a modern remake, well, a modern Western remake. Sure, I mean, it's going to be set in the past, but, with modern technology, because this launched the spaghetti Westerns. It also launched Clint Eastwood's career. So to have... This is kind of a huge movie when it comes to Westerns. Like, this is, if you're a fan of Westerns and you think of Westerns, like A Fistful of Dollars is one of the top that you're thinking about.
Yeah, and there's always, it seems like every 15 to 20 years or so, like the Western genre goes away for a while and then something comes back to kind of recapture some of that magic, right? So you had like for us when we were younger, Tombstone was huge, like an absolutely huge movie, right? And now they're talking about bringing this back as well. Like you said, it was the launch of Clint Eastwood's career. It was a very popular film for its time, and now it's coming back as kind of an updated version of it. I'm curious to see who they put in this because there are quite a few actors that I think could pull it off.
I mean, Clint Eastwood does have a son.
It very much could. He should be involved in it. Probably Scott would probably be involved in it, but I'm curious to see who they would cast. And obviously, the whole popularity of Yellowstone. That's kind of a modern Western kind of thing. I like to call Yellowstone Sons of Anarchy with cowboys, but that's a whole other thing. Great show though. Still love the show, but with the popularity of that, I'm curious to see what the modern take on it's going to look like.
But it's also to see, as we have with Kevin Costner, who's kind of been king of, as I mentioned before, he does two things really well, which is Westerns and baseball and films.
Sure.
And, he just put out a big Western and it hasn't done that well. Good. And then we get this announcement. Are we going to see if Westerns do have that kind of, I guess you're looking at $80 to $100 million production on a lot of these movies anymore. So with that, you've got to turn a Western into a blockbuster. And are we really going to be able to get that out of a fistful of dollars? Don't really know, but we'll see if they end up turning in and people turn out to see it, because it's a classic. And you're redoing yet another classic. Is it needed? We'll find out if they can do a good job with it, because like Open Range a few years ago, that was a great newer Western that was done. They can still be done really well. It just, you're taking on the spaghetti Western. Yeah. And we got to see if they can do that the right way.
We'll see if it hits, but we'll have more information on that as it comes out. I know we mentioned it at the top. You mentioned it in the intro, but we do have Sam Raimi coming back to the horror genre to direct a new film called Send Help. So it's kind of been described as Misery meets Castaway, which is an interesting mix of two, I think, very different types of movies. But Sam Raimi, fantastic horror director. He's gone on to direct some really, really big movies, obviously with the original Spider-Man trilogy, but coming back to kind of his bread and butter in horror. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, because, of course, The Evil Dead was what everyone got to know him from. Absolutely. And those kind of campy horror fun. Is this going to be campy horror? Is he going to go more thriller? Because Misery, you're looking at a more psychological kind of darker horror thriller. But with Castaway, kind of, maybe the isolation of a couple people being alone on an island and seeing what happens between them. It's an intriguing type of premise and setup, and it's having him. I think it's 2009 was the last time that he released a horror film. It's good to see him back, and hopefully it's something fun. And I know I'll be looking forward to see it when it comes out.
The premise of two people alone on a desert island, or however many people are going to be in this movie, is already just concept of a horror film, in my opinion, because it's a trope that can tell some really fun and creative stories, like what happens when people are deserted on an island like that. How do they behave? How do they, make their way off that island? You can go the Gilligan's Island route, or you can go a completely darker route, right? So the fact that he's making a horror movie with that type of premise, I'm excited to see what he does with it, because he's an absolutely brilliant director. The guy is fantastic at most movies he's put out, I've enjoyed. So the fact that he's coming back to horror for the first time in 15 years, I'm very much excited for it.
Yeah, because he returned to Marvel with the Doctor Strange and with the Doctor Strange sequel, and now he's going back to his roots with horror. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, we hope it's going to be a lot of fun to see him back in horror now. But heading over to one of our favorite series of the year with X-Men 97. So we already know that season 2 is in heavy development. They kind of finished off everything that Bo had started. They've got it going. I think voice actors are supposed to start recording and doing stuff soon. But we got confirmation that season 3 is officially in development. So Matthew Chauncey, who's worked on the What If series, will be writing and heading up season 3. But it's good to know that we've got at least 3 seasons coming out of this.
I'm so happy. This has been such a breath of fresh air for me. I know we've really enjoyed. You can go back in our archives and watch, as we did a watch along week by week of the X-Men 97 first season. We're very much looking forward to the second season as well. And now that we're getting a third season, I'm so happy. I hope as long as they continue to tell good stories like they have been, I can't wait to see what they come up with. And it's exciting. I know we talked last week on our podcast about all the voice actors coming to the Cincy Comic Expo, which we're still hoping to get press credentials for. A little wink at the camera for that. But it's great that it's, they got somebody who's already familiar with the Marvel property. Like you said, the writer worked on What If. What If is low-key a very underrated show on Disney Plus. If you haven't got a chance to watch it, it's really good. Some really well-told stories of some outlandish, stories with characters you're already familiar with and what happens in these alternate universes, these variants of these characters in ways you've never seen them before. So the fact that they're already familiar with the Marvel properties and they're coming to take it over has me really excited to see what they come up with.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Like season 2, I want to watch it now because I love the first. I'm going to go back and watch season 1 again. I've even started a rewatch of the original X-Men animated series just to kind of have a fun. I think I got into season 3. Yeah. So still going through it, and then probably once I finish that, I'm going to do another rewatch of the first season. But yeah, at least 3 seasons of this, and then we don't talk about rumors and rumblings too much, but there was talks that Marvel is kind of not exactly fast tracking, but they're looking at doing an animated feature film.
Love it.
And we have talked in the past that the X-Men 97 creators want to do a feature film with X-Men. So maybe Marvel's like, all right, let's do it. And maybe we'll do 3 seasons in a movie.
Give me all of it. I'm here for every little bit of it. That makes me so happy that we've talked about it in the past and it's actually looking like it could happen. I know we're still waiting for Comic-Con coming up here in the next week or 2. And hopefully they have some more news on that front as part of their panel. Their panel's starting to have a little bit of information coming out about it. I know we were a little surprised that they dropped the Captain America trailer ahead of that as opposed to debuting it at the panel when they do it. But X-Men 97, give me 3 seasons in a movie, and I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, because we got the Agatha trailer and Captain America trailer before Comic-Con. You figured those would be 2 big things, but we've heard it's going to be an hour for their panel, so maybe they just focusing on the Fantastic Four, maybe Daredevil Born Again, because that's their next kind of big series. Maybe that's the kind of stuff they're focusing on their panel for, and there just wasn't room to include that in there. But yeah, with Comic-Con coming up, it was a little strange to see those 2 trailers beforehand, which Agatha's looking good. It's looking like it has some decent horror aspects in it. There was one like demon character that it showed that was like, okay, we're going a little dark horror kind of demon within. Like, we'll see how that ends up turning out. There's some mystery that we saw in the trailer. And Captain America's looking good. I mean, we got a little in-joke as we kind of got with when Rhodey was replaced. And, of course, the actor who played Thunderbolt Ross passed away. And we got a replacement with Harrison Ford. And just having that joke right in the trailer of how he looks a little different. Like, oh, yeah. And shaved my mustache and looking a little bit different. I just loved it because it was a throwback to that. But also, how you going to talk about what happened. Like, it's not that like with Rhodey, with them replacing an actor, an actor passed away and they had to bring someone else in to continue it. So that was just a fun little throwaway line in that. But there's a lot to look forward to with Marvel coming up.
There's a lot, and I know we talk about them ad nauseum. One thing that we've also talked about ad nauseum on this, because it seems to be the theme in Hollywood now, is sequels, right? So we talked a little bit about Shrek 5 being announced. We got a little more information and a release date for that film. So Shrek 5 is stated to be in theaters July 1st, 2026. Now, we don't like to crystal ball too much into the future for a lot of things, but looking ahead to 2026, you want to talk about, if you're a fan of animation and sequels, 2026 is going to be your year because there's so much on slate for 2026, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like Toy Story 5 comes out 2 weeks before Shrek 5 does. So that's 2 heavy hitters alone. I mean, the Shrek franchise made a ton of money. The Toy Story franchise prints money. Yeah. But past that, we have Super Mario Brothers 2. The movie 2 is out. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem 2. Frozen 3. All big animated sequels coming out the year. But past that, we have Avengers 5 in the same year. The live-action Moana. We have Mandalorian and Grogu. Like, there's 2026 is stacking up to be a pretty huge slate of sequels, remakes, live action, but it's going to be a jam-packed, probably summer to December. We're going to just have one huge movie after another.
It bodes well for stuff that we're going to have to talk about and break down on the podcast in 2 years, right? So that's exciting for the future for us, for our show to talk about. But coming back to Shrek a little bit, we did get confirmation that Mike Myers and Cameron Diaz are also going to be returning along with Eddie Murphy. So they've got the three main, voice actors in the cast. I haven't heard word if Antonio Banderas is going to come back as Puss in Boots or not. But we did get confirmation that Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey, all the original voice actors, are on and locked in to return. So that's a good development for that show.
Yeah, we'll see if they end up including Puss in Boots, because they actually had a really solid with the Puss in Boots Last Wish. It was a lot different and kind of darker and more emotional than expected with it. And it was, really solid. So we'll see if they feel like they need to leave Puss in Boots kind of alone for a moment there, or if they're going to kind of bring him back from where we left him at the end of that movie, because we don't exactly know story-wise where kind of all these fit in with each other. If Puss in Boots is a little bit later, after Shrek 4, and Shrek 5 can fit in there. If Shrek 5 is after The Last Wish, we don't really know with that, but
so many sequels.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to, like I said, I really enjoy the Shrek series. It's been quite a while since we've had one of them, so it's a good little break for that to be coming back. We talked about in our last episode was Despicable Me, although we didn't exactly enjoy the movie. You can see what we felt about it. It's still printing money. It just crossed $5 billion, one of the, I think now the biggest animated franchise in history when it comes to box office and everything, and they already greenlit Minions 3 for, I think, 2027. Yeah. So, animation sequels are not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, they're printing money left and right. Like you said, quality of story, aside in some cases. A lot of cases, these stories have been good. Like, we've watched some other animated sequels here recently. We loved Inside Out, too. So, that's also a huge hit as well. So, when the stories are done right, it's fine. But I know the running joke is, oh, look, another sequel. They're out of ideas. But you got to look at it from a business perspective, too. Like, we joke about it, and are they needed? But if you're in charge of these, properties and they're printing money, why wouldn't you keep going back to the well, right?
Especially with how the box office has been. Some of the smaller, more original movies just aren't performing like the sequels do. Like, one of the movies we're most looking forward to this year, and pretty much two of them, is Deadpool and Wolverine and Alien Romulus, and they're all sequels. Yes. Or continuations. Romulus, I think, is supposed to take place after Aliens.
Yeah.
So it's in there, so it's kind of squeezing itself in between Aliens and Alien 3. But it is, a continuation, a sequel. And, Deadpool and Wolverine is Deadpool 3. Supposed to be kicking off the mutants and X-Men and the MCU and stuff. But, sequels, it's what's making them money right now. So you can't, it's hard to hate on them for going to that well, just because that's what's making the money.
Yeah, and I think there's been such a trope over the years of sequels just not being up to par quality of story-wise to some of these originals. Like, for the longest time, the running joke was the sequel's never as good as the original, but we're finding in a lot of cases sometimes that sequels now that are coming out are as good, if not better, than the originals in some cases. And, the fact that they're continuing to try to do it, who are we to say that they can't? But like we've always said, if the quality of the story is there, we are fine with going back to that well repeatedly. It's when it starts to lose steam and lose a little bit of that magic that we're like, okay, like it's still making money. Like it's kind of a case-by-case basis now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you've got some that might be churning out a new movie every 2 years, and it's just like, all right, didn't we just have one? And where, if it's quality and they actually put some love and heart and meaning behind it, it's like Alien Romulus is quickly continuing to climb up my list of movies to see, because it just visually looks so stunning. Like, it's fifth or sixth, seventh kind of Alien movie. If you put in Alien and Predator, and you put in the Prometheus movies, and you have the original, few and everything, there's been quite a lot of them. But this one looks to be kind of going back to its roots of Alien and Aliens and everything, and it looks amazing. I'm like, if it's got a good story and it's giving me that horror aspect that I love so much of the first two, but also mixing in the action, because the director came out and said, like, it's a mix of Alien and Alien. So I'm like, yes, please sign me up. Yes. And if it does enough original stuff, like, absolutely give me the sequels. It's, we kind of felt with Despicable Me 4, it was one of those that maybe they didn't put as much into the story of making something entertaining story-wise. And that's all we hope for. Like, we'll take the sequels. Just put show that you're putting effort into the story
Yes.
and what they are, instead of it feeling like it's just, all right, we know it's going to make money, let's throw it out there.
Right. And at the end of the day, that's what means the most to us.
Yeah. So moving on to The Bear. So we have season 3 is out now. All 10 episodes are available to watch, but we had Eben kind of talking about the show a little bit, saying, well, we actually recorded 18 episodes. So originally season 3 and 4 were supposed to be shot back to back, but at the premiere, all the actors, they were a little cagey about it. They're like, no, the scripts weren't ready, so we didn't really do the back to back as we planned. Well, we've only got 10 episodes released. It's kind of looking like those 8 episodes might be the first 8 of season 4, and when they resume in January, February, whenever they have the time to resume it next year, that it's just to finish those last couple episodes. And that kind of surprised me because we were looking forward, like, are you shooting back to back? Because we really enjoy the show, and we'll see how long it takes in between seasons. And they're like, oh, we didn't do it, but wait, we did.
Yeah, it's a little bit of mixed information, right? And it's quickly become, for both of us, I think, a very high-ranking show as far as our enjoyment. The writing's incredible. It's brilliant, brilliantly acted, brilliantly written. I still have 4 episodes left of season 3, and I've enjoyed every bit of it up to this point as well. Such a fantastic show. If you haven't watched it yet, go out of your way to, find it on Hulu or Disney Plus or whichever service you have that shows it. Watch it on FX's website as well, I believe. But go out of your way to watch it. They're quick episodes. They take about 25, 30 minutes a piece to watch, and they're only 10 episodes in a season. So it's easy to kind of binge and get through to watch it. But the fact that they shot so many episodes and then stopped, that's kind of rare for a show, because they tend to either like shoot an entire half of a season and then maybe take a break, or they shoot the entire thing in like one shot, like over a couple months or however long it takes to shoot it. But it seems weird that they gave us 10 episodes, but they talk like they shot 8 more and they still need to go back and film a couple. Maybe they filmed everything they could that they had written, and maybe what's left is finishing season 4, but that seems odd that they shoot 18 episodes worth of content. We only got 8.
Yeah, because maybe they just didn't want to rush those last couple because they were kind of running out of time. Because as we know, Jeremy Allen White has so many projects. Eben's going on to the Fantastic Four.
Correct.
And we have so much going on. But I'm also glad that maybe they just didn't take what they had for those episodes that aren't finished and just film it anyways and just say, all right, we got the season done like we wanted to. They're like, you know what, these scripts aren't ready yet. Let's give it time, because we don't, there's talk that a season 5 of The Bear is possible, but we don't really know past season 4 for certain. So could those last few episodes end up being the series finale or something more important that they really wanted to make sure, all right, maybe even the studio, they wanted to see how, season 3 performed, and there could maybe be changes that helps those last couple episodes wrap up the series instead of, continuing it on to a season 5. But it is kind of odd when you hear that, the seasons have been 10 episodes and they filmed 18. Did the actors know that they were filming? Because that's kind of how it felt from them. Like they didn't exactly know they were filming, the next season, because, and not to give anything away, but at the very end of the 10th episode, it says to be continued. And so you normally don't get that at the end of a season. So even that kind of leaves up a mystery of like, are we going to get these 8 episodes actually as like a season 3 part 2 instead of it being season 4? Yeah. Like there is kind of an oddity with them filming 18 but not finishing it, and then and not really talking about it that they did those 8, except for the actors now talking about it.
Are you as confused as I am? Because I am confused. Because it's so like it feels so disjointed for a show that is very well put together, right? But to have a bit of chaotic news is a bit on point if you've watched the show and know how chaotic that show is.
Yeah,
it's insane, but it's smart and so like charming and such a good show. It's funny. It is vulgar though, so watch, like, language-wise, there's a lot of language in that show. So,
and I love, I sent it to you the other day that Jeremy Allen White was actually out this weekend making Italian beefs at a restaurant somewhere. So it looked like a scene from the show, that there was a little video clip of him outside smoking and taking a little break, but he was out there slinging Italian beefs.
I would love to have gotten an Italian beef from Carmi. That would have been cool.
They said the lines were insane.
I could imagine. But that would have been cool.
That would have been awesome. And to see that connection, that we don't don't really know how much they've actually learned about cooking and how
Sure.
much it's like chefs coming in doing the presentation. Then you just got to put this leaf very daintily or squeeze a little bit of this on there, and it actually looks like maybe they learned a little bit more about cooking. At least make some Italian beefs or something else. Like that's kind of neat to see him, because really wasn't advertised either, unless it was advertised in the area that he's just going to go sling some Italian beefs.
I love that, though. That's so cool. Like, if you get a chance, like I said, we cannot recommend that show enough. It's so good, so well written.
Yep.
But to kind of pivot back towards, I know we were talking about Westerns a little bit, with Horizon, An American Saga Chapter 1, it's supposed to be the first part of a 3-part series, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2. But the first one is not doing well at all at the box office, so much so that Chapter 2 has been delayed kind of indefinitely until they figure out like when they want to come out with the second one. The second one was supposed to come out next month. Like it was going to quickly come out, and it's been infinitely delayed for now.
Yeah, New Line talking with Kevin Costner's production company was like, hey, we're going to pull it. We're going to go ahead and put it on demand, release it out there for more people to watch while it's still giving a little bit more time in theaters. And we're going to see how it performs and reevaluate how Chapter 2 is, which it does kind of stink for Kevin, because this kind of cost him not being able to come back to finish Yellowstone to do this project, because there's a big argument between him and the creators and showrunners about him needing time to do these films while Yellowstone was going on. He also put over $38 million into getting these films made. So to see it, I haven't been able to check it out yet. It is over a 3-hour movie, and there's just been so much coming out. Like, there's definitely a lot of picking and choosing of what we're able to see and go. Like, I would love to spend every single day in the theater seeing movies, but just haven't been able to. But yeah, not a lot of people have gone and see it. I've heard good things about it. But as we talked about, are Westerns having that kind of impact that they want it to be? Would have been better to have this come out in the fall to winter time instead of during summer blockbuster season.
I was just about to make that argument as well, because I think it was misplaced timing-wise on the calendar, being put in the middle of so many big things that I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Like you said, you haven't seen it. I haven't seen it either. I want to check it out eventually too, but it could also come into play a little bit of the negative press that Kevin Costner's gotten a lot of over like the last year or so, with Yellowstone being a extremely popular TV series, and kind of the drama about, is he coming back, is he leaving, and it threw the future of the show in doubt, that they're kind of ending it probably before they even wanted to because of it. And I know, like, if you pay attention to gossip around that show, that a lot of people are blaming Kevin Costner for being difficult to work with on this, and I think a lot of that negative publicity could be kind of manifesting itself in the support or lack thereof for this movie. Not to say the movie quality is not going to be good, because like you said, Kevin Costner is brilliant in these types of movies that he makes, but it could be a combination of the negative press from the fallout of the Yellowstone series on top of, his personal situation, which doesn't, it doesn't really matter for us, but that could affect some people's taking of wanting to see this movie, but also, like you said, putting it in the middle of a lot of these family movies that are doing so well, on top of, Deadpool and Wolverine that we're glowing about, that's going to make a fortune. It's kind of like, as people are being more picky and choosy about what they go see, are people waiting till it comes out on demand or like on a streaming service to watch it? And will that affect their desire to watch part 2 in the theaters as well? Like, I'd be curious to see if it had come out in like a little bit of a lesser, deader period of time, like late September, early October, where there's not a lot of bigger type films, that if it had come out then, how well would it have done?
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of films this summer that I'm kind of surprised that they're coming, because we normally do get a lot of big blockbuster tentpole movies, but you get a lot of smaller movies. But you got stuff like Longlegs, and you have Fly Me to the Moon, which we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, and you got Horizon. You've got a lot of films that just maybe what they might make of the box office is going to be so much lower, because if they were later in the year, they might do a whole lot better. But because we saw last year with Oppenheimer and Barbie, Oppenheimer being a 3-hour period piece, did extremely well, but it's also a Christopher Nolan film. It's, got Cillian Murphy in it, who's beloved by almost about everybody with his acting ability, but it had that Barbie mashup to kind of help both of them and carry them. So, Horizon didn't really have anything to kind of attach it to. That, are you going to see Inside Out 2 and Western? Like, just didn't really have anything to pair with to help it. And just kind of where it came out, everyone's seeing quite a lot of different movies. So yeah, it felt more like that's more of a fall to winter type movie to me. That, you know, we do have a few dates where there really aren't some big movies. Like maybe it would have been better going maybe late, maybe even taken when Chapter 2 was going to come out. That might have been when Chapter 1 came out, and December put out Chapter 2.
Yeah, agreed. And talking about the whole Oppenheimer Barbie thing, the brilliant marketing that was around it. I know they're trying to make that happen later this year with Gladiator and Wicked. They're calling it Glicked already, which is going to be fun. I think Pedro Pascal dubbed it that, or Paul Mescal, one or the other. It kind of started to get that hype train going a little bit to see if that pays off for both of those movies.
Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easy.
Glicked. Like, it just sounds icky, but
bless you.
Yeah, thank you. And but we'll see if that bodes well for both of those films. I think both of those films are gonna do just fine anyway. But
that was an odd one. Wicked moving up a week to go against Gladiator, or 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, so it didn't go up against Moana. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like
I can see that because Wicked and Moana may have similar, because it's Wizard of Oz, but it's also theater people who's going to go seeing them. But you might have a lot of families taking, going to see Moana. I'm going to be seeing Moana and Wicked as well with the family. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. But then again, like that's a crowded release window right there.
Very much so, in a short period of time, too. For the time of year that it's coming out is usually like a Christmas thing, but it's coming out around like November.
And we have Nosferatu for Christmas.
I love that. I'm so looking forward to that. That looks so fun. I'm looking forward to that, too. But yeah, it's a shame to see it do so poorly. I hope we're kind of to blame to that, too. Like, we're not going and seeing it ourselves yet, but I'm curious to see what that film looks like when it comes out, and if there's more buzz that comes from it when it gets put on demand and on streaming service, that kind of raise that desire for Chapter 2 to come out. Because like you said, he invested so much money in this that the fact that it's done so poorly has got to it's got to suck, man. That's a huge hit to not only somebody's ego, but their bank account too. Like, that's not an insignificant amount of your own money to upfront to make this movie, but we'll see how it does.
Yeah, and we'll have more information at the end of the episode about the on-demand release of Chapter 1, so when you can check that out. So, stay tuned for that, because it is coming very soon. Moving on, so Redbox started back in 2002. So kind of between Redbox and Netflix, this was kind of what helped kill off Blockbuster. And I don't know how big Movie Gallery was outside of our area, but we had Blockbuster and Movie Gallery huge here. But with Netflix had their DVD rentals, and of course the streaming that started, and Redbox popping up these kiosks all throughout grocery stores and storefronts. It kind of helped kill off Blockbuster. Well, after 22 years, Redbox is closing up shop. So they filed for Chapter 7. They're closing up. It is no more.
End of an era. I remember, I've had such a love-hate relationship with Redbox over the years, because one of my favorite things to do growing up was, Friday after school, the family running down to Blockbuster, renting a couple movies, or a couple movies in a game, or a movie in a game, or whatever, and just kind of enjoying the weekend. And that was kind of how I grew to love movies as a kid, was going to Blockbuster, renting the movies, and watching them together as a family. And Redbox just kind of came and undercut the whole process. Well, it's brilliant. It was brilliant, business strategy on their part. It was like, hey, you're already going to the grocery store. What if we took out your need to travel to go to Blockbuster to a movie store as well? And you could just in one spot go to this kiosk, pick out a movie you want to watch, pay less than you're going to pay to rent the movie at the movie store, and get it for a couple of days and bring it back. It was a brilliant business strategy that kind of, like you said, undercut an entire generation of going to the video store.
Yeah, they even brought in video games for a little while there. I think they stopped that 2015, 2016 or something.
Sure.
So you could do basically what you could do at Blockbuster. That was the same with me, going as a family. My kids will never know and will say that and sound so old saying it, but going to Blockbuster and finding a movie, finding a game, checking it out, going home and doing it, there was kind of, I don't want to say family bonding, but it was just something that kind of brought you together. You picked out your movies, picked out your games together. You can even, I've rented a few consoles from those places as well. And There was a lot of good memories tied to that. Redbox I never really used. I don't know if I had some animosity to it because it killed Blockbuster off, but it was something I never really used. But for the longest time there, anytime I went to the grocery store or anything else, I could see several people waiting to get something out of the Redbox and turn it back. And I know they started having a lot of things getting stolen, and they were replacing with like CDRs and other stuff. So I'm sure that hurt them quite a bit too. But we also have physical media has been going down, which I still love. I buy, a lot of movies still, and I love to get collector's editions and box sets and stuff. We just had the Godzilla -1 box set finally announced. That looks really good. Maybe there'll be a giveaway for that at some point here once it comes out. We're not expecting, I think, till September. But yeah, I still collect a lot of stuff, but we've got Best Buy and a lot of other stores are not going to be carrying physical media. We have most computers and devices, like even the game consoles. You have digital-only versions. Like we're not seeing physical media doing that well anymore. Like, I'm surprised we haven't seen a change to being on cartridges or SD cards or something else, and they just get rid of the disc version and we go to that kind of thing. But because it's much easier to have a drive on your computer where you just plug one thing in instead of having, the space for a large CD drive. But yeah, physical media has been going down. Everyone's streaming, doing all that, but we're also running into, we have some games and movies that are being removed from people's account that they've purchased because the rights have expired to something else, and that they're just taking away your digital stuff. So we don't want physical media to go away, but with Redbox going down, and with I think even Sony announcing that they're winding down their Blu-rays and everything else, that we're seeing physical media kind of go away, which is a good thing, but also a very bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, how we feel about physical media as well, and you can go back in our archives and check out that episode too, where we do kind of like a whole breakdown on how we really feel about the whole, physical media going away and the whole what it means to consumers to lose rights and stuff like that. That there's still a lot of these companies are still trying to figure out. You know what I mean? Because it's a whole other problematic thing. But man, it hits me in the feels thinking about nostalgic trips to like Blockbuster and stuff. Could you remember, like, we're gonna show our age here a little bit, but how frustrating was it to be so excited to see a movie when it was finally coming to Blockbuster that when you got to Blockbuster and it wasn't there?
I was going to say, there was like some movies you rushed to Blockbuster when they opened at like 10 a.m. or something, and you ran over to see because, for the younger generation that never experienced, you would have the box and then you would have the rental cases behind it. And you would go and you would just see the regular box art and not any of the cases. And like, they have a whole wall of them and they're all out. Because we ran into that several times with movies, that you would have your new release wall and it's just already cleared out. And like, oh, well, now they're a 2-3 day rental, so you come back in 2 to 3 days and hope, because some movies you had to wait a little bit for to be able to rent. Like, it was even 2 or 3 days or a week later, you were struggling to find that on the shelf.
And then you had to go and like bug the person working at the counter to see if somebody may have brought back a copy.
Is
of
it in the Dropbox?
Like, is it? Can you check the Dropbox for me real quick? But that's the wonderful thing about technology now, is you don't have to wait for things. Like, as soon as it's available, you can watch it. But part of that fun was going there and just been like, all right, I'm excited. Here's the wall for the movies. And it's gone. Like, that sucks. Like, what are we going to watch now? Like, let's pick another movie that, we may not have been as excited to see and kind of have to deal with it. But that's the reality for, what we had to deal with growing up. And it's crazy to see how much that landscape has changed in the last 20 years, really. Because it, like you said, this started in 2002. Like, you were finishing school. I was still in school getting ready to finish the next year. Yeah, I know we're showing our age. I'm calling you out. But that's the reality of what we faced. And when that stuff started popping up and you just started to see, less and less, blockbusters, and now they're down to what? One? There's still one that's kind of up and running, which I still bucket list trip want to go check that out just for us.
I think up in Alaska.
Yeah. Alaska or Oregon or one of those.
Somewhere
in the Northwest. I want to go visit just for the nostalgia alone. But yeah, like it's the end of an era, and even an end of a Redbox era now that we're seeing that kind of undercut that's going away completely. Like, with everything going digital now, like, those days are coming to an end. But it's just like, for those of us that still love physical media, we hope it sticks around as long as it possibly can. But it doesn't feel like in a few more years that's going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, which is kind of sad because we talked about ownership. Are you change devices or something else? Like, how is your physical media? Because we've seen a ton of those with Fandango now, and kind of those type of services that are kind of outside of the major studios that you can have, purchased or unlocked films on. They've shut down, they've merged, they've gone together. Like, having it all in a digital landscape is fine in theory, but what happens when those servers go down or that company goes out of business? Like, where is your media? Well, if you got physical media, you can watch it whenever you want. Sure. If everything is digital and streaming, what happens when power goes out and you have no more internet or anything like that? Well, if you have a generator, you can watch something, through that way, but you can't stream it because you don't have any internet to stream it anymore.
Keep physical media around. That's the lesson that we want to get.
Like I said, it needs still to shift because, like I said, nobody really has. Even my wife broke her foot, and we got the x-rays from the doctors, and they brought it to us on a CDR, and I'm like, I used to have huge stacks of CDRs laying around. When was the last time I had a CDR in my hand? Like, this is making me feel really old. Like, wait, now I have to go into my box of electronics that every dad or tech guy has. I just got a tote of electronics to find where that USB CD drive is so I can import that into the computer.
It was the old badge of honor with the giant bookshelf full of DVDs and Blu-rays and CDs, just as far as the eye can see, right? That was a badge of honor for us back then. Like, look at how cool my movie collection is. It goes to the ceiling, and it's got every movie ever made on it, and I have physical copies of all of them. Like, those days are just kind of like gone by the wayside now. But like you said, if you still have those, you'd never have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. But it's such a wild way that things have swung in the last 20 years that I'm really starting to feel my age at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Even like we talked about Netflix with Redbox was kind of a part of that downfall. Yeah. And I can't even remember how long it's been since they got rid of their DVD subscription service. And of course, they're still huge and, out there and stuff. Yeah. But we see how one transcended and left the physical media and is doing well, while the other one tried to hold on to the physical media. And, 22 years isn't a terrible run for a company like that, especially when we saw how, long it's been since Blockbuster went under. But it is kind of sad, even though I never really use it. It's kind of sad to see more of the physical media and the rental options and stuff be kind of going by the wayside.
Yeah, and a lot of people do forget that is how Netflix also started, too, because Netflix was a subscription DVD service as well. Like, you could mail in a movie and mail it back out. Like, we're definitely still showing our age here, but that is how Netflix started, and to see what it has become now, and this huge global media giant that it's become. Like, it had very humble beginnings as well. So it's wild to see how everything's going. But I don't want to continue to get depressed talking about that, so I kind of want to move into our last story. So sorry about that, but the last story I did want to touch on is, speaking of shows that make us feel nostalgic, one of the biggest shows when we were growing up was Martin. Martin was a huge show on TV. Well, Martin Lawrence is going to be producing a young Martin series. So we have like Everybody Hates Chris, which is kind of like a younger take on Chris Rock, but now we're getting like a version with Martin that has been greenlit, and he's going to be starting to working on. I don't think there's any update on what network is going to have it yet, but he's at least going to start working on it. Maybe they're shooting a pilot to shop around to get on a network, but that's an interesting one because that's also a show that's not without its controversy for how it ended.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to bring up because, it ended after I think 5 seasons, but it didn't end because they were ready to move on or anything, but our 2 main stars, Martin Lawrence and Tish Campbell, they didn't get along. Yeah. And to the point where she brought a lawsuit against Martin for sexual harassment and more, which he's rebutted and saying that they're fine now and that never really happened. And she's taken offense to that it actually did, but she can't talk because of the gag order and everything afterwards. But, the original series ended because of that. She wouldn't even film a scene with him in the final episodes. Like, she didn't want to be on the same set. And so to have a show end in controversy between your 2 main stars, because that's what really made that show work. I mean, Martin Lawrence was fantastic, but she also helped carry that show. She was amazing. Gina
was a huge part of it.
Playing off of him and like those 2 together. So to see them come back to a series that ended because of controversy. I know he's still got the Bad Boy series, which has come back and done well, but that's kind of all he he's really had going for him lately. But to kind of bring a young version out after all that controversy is kind of interesting. And you also don't know, it worked because of both of them. How is a younger version going to work?
Yeah, we'll see for sure. The details of it are very sketch, but I wanted to bring it up because it was a huge show when it was out. It's one of the most successful sitcoms of that day. Like It really was. It was a big pop culture, deal when it was out, and the fact that they're going back to it is going to be interesting to, like you said, to see if a younger version of that character works, because it could or it could not. It could work. It could not. We don't know. And we don't know where it's going to wind up, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially given the way that it ended.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to our TV breakdown of the week. We're at episode 7 of The Acolyte, so we've got one more remaining after this, and we felt like this was going to be coming. Thought it was going to happen before now, but we got the second flashback, as we did in episode 3, that kind of gave us the rest of the story of what happened at the Coven with the Jedi, but this left me with so much more questions and issues and problems than it really gave answers to the fact that I've got an entire sheet of notes on this episode to talk about things that were questionable and iffy, and it's a whole sheet. It's full.
Look, we have tried really hard to give this show the benefit of the doubt in a lot of ways. We've given this show a lot of grace, but after this episode, I'm kind of in agreement with you. I'm excited to go through it.
Because, it really felt like they were giving us a big payoff, like the show itself, but it was just done in such another messy way. Like, everybody's motivations and their characters is wishy-washy. I think wishy-washy is the best I can say about it. It's like, we're looking at this character one way, and then another episode makes us look at him a different way, but not in a good sense.
Right.
It's not in a mystery or anything else or an evolution of the character. It just is messy. Like, overall, I really want to love this series. I don't hate it. It's just messy. Like, the writing, the approach to these characters just needed to be better. So, yeah, we kick off that we learn that the Jedi have made it to this planet of where the Coven is found because, the Jedi Council believe that there is a virgin, something with the Force that could potentially create life. Like, there's so much power within this Force virgins that they're kind of looking for signs of it. And it leads it to the planet where the Coven have set up. And we kind of learn that the planet was basically barren and didn't have anything, but it seemed like this Force virgins had created life, had created all the trees and everything else, which is kind of an interesting thing as we're trying to dive deeper into the Force and understanding of just how strong or out there the Force is. But, this late into the series, kind of touching on something this big, it feels like it's setting up for something, but, we've got potentially 30 minutes left of this season.
Yeah, the writing on this has been so disjointed, like you said. There's so many. Is it weird that the person with the most redeeming qualities in this show is the villain?
I was going to say that. So far, the one you connect with, and maybe that's a point that we're supposed to connect more with the Sith and seeing the Jedi as not being as good of people as we've always seen them. But yeah, Kamir is the one that you're kind of connecting to with most, and he's butchered a lot of people. Yeah.
The guy causing the most death and destruction is the one that you kind of relate to the most. And if that's the ultimate point of the show, sure, but there's so many, nuances that they're just not hitting on. By the end of this episode, I hate using that word. I hate using the word hate. I hate Soul as a character.
Yeah, they've really crushed his character.
Yeah, you kind of start pulling for him at the beginning of the series, okay, he's going to be the one that's trying to help Osha, trying to bring her back to maybe being a Jedi, and he has this connection with her. But, the guy's kind of a creep the way he's written. He has a little bit of a unsettling obsession with the twins in this episode that he's he's desperate for a Padawan to the point where, even his fellow Jedi are kind of poking fun at him for it, which is a ridiculous premise to begin with. But he has this obsession with the twins. He feels like Osha is destined to be his Padawan at this point, and he's kind of going through some ridiculous measures to make that happen. I don't know, man. I'm gonna try really hard not to drop some expletives in here, but this episode really bothered me.
Yeah, this episode definitely kind of destroyed Soul's character in a bit.
100%.
He immediately becomes obsessive with the twins, and like he literally, we find out that they've been on this planet for 7 weeks. So we've got Torben, kind of a whiny teenager. He just wants to go home. He doesn't want to be here anymore. So he's kind of pouting and being all that, and he's also got some, I would say, odd parallels to Anakin.
A little bit, yeah.
Because similar look. He also does Anakin's, lightsaber spin and the battles and stuff, and is kind of that whiny, I just want to get it over with type of character, but who causes a lot of problems here. But it also doesn't relate to, there's just so many problems. So we'll start off with Soul's obsession. So again, we learned that they've been there for several weeks. They haven't found what they're looking for, so they all decide to split up. And so Soul is going through the woods, and he comes upon the twins, Osha and May, underneath this, very unique tree, which we think is kind of tied to the virgins and tied to the girls and stuff. And he sees them, and again, it's a very brief moment. He's just observing that they're using the Force a little bit, and then you have Coral come up and tell him to leave, which we saw in episode 3.
Flashback to the flashback.
But we see that. And he's calling back, but he decides he's going to follow him. And he follows him back to the compound, which tries to open the door. It doesn't happen. So what any logical person would do when you come on a planet that you thought didn't have anybody is scale a mountain and break in.
Yeah, because that's a totally rational response for what a Jedi would do in this case.
So yeah, he scales the side of the mountain, breaks into the compound, and we have one little scene where he sees that the mother is kind of teaching him defense with the Force and all that stuff, which is kind of, you see a woman basically attacking kids, but in a way to teach them things. But he leaves and goes back to the Jedi after that and say, we got to save them. We got to help them. There's people here. There's kids here. I want Osha as my Padawan. Like, he just goes off the deep end of stalking them, obsessiveness, creepiness. It's just like for no reason given, really, that he has become just instantly uber obsessed with the twins.
Yeah, it's like it's like a platonic infatuation is what the words I used to describe it when I was trying to think about like how I felt about this. Because even Endara, who's very much like to the letter of the law, like a lot of Jedi are, she's like, you're starting to have this unhealthy emotional attachment to these girls, which if you know anything about the lore of the Jedi, you're supposed to forego all emotional attachments to things and have none of those things, which he's just completely, for being a Jedi Master, he's just throwing to the wayside like it's nothing, like it means nothing. And it's such a weird, like, this is the problem that I have with the writing. It's just a weird dynamic, weird motivations, weird choices that he's making, like to the point, like you said, he can't get in. Well, I'm going to get in anyway because I have to save these girls who are just being so mistreated. Like they're not being taught the things that the people that are raising them want them to learn.
Like, we didn't see any real mistreatment out of the two scenes that gave us his motivation. Like, yeah, they were learning defensive stuff, and it looked like they were maybe a little strict, but we've seen from the Jedi that they can be really strict, and having them practice having lasers being blasted at them with lightsabers while
perfectly fine.
The mask is on them, like, that's perfectly fine. But if they're just stopping Force from another Force user, like the motivation behind how quickly he became obsessed just didn't make sense. And I feel like it also kind of destroyed Endara's character a little bit too, that she has no control. She is like the bigger master there, and she has no control over these people around her. None. Torben is doing whatever he wants to do. So, Soul comes back, and she wants to wait for the council and see what the council does. But Soul's like, but it looks like they're having a ceremony, and they might hurt the girls tonight, and they might do this. Like, we need to act now without, like, he wants to forego everything with the council to rush to these girls, which we didn't see anything at that moment that really gave us. Like, we got knowledge that they're aware of the Night Sisters, and they call these witches and a coven and a cult and stuff like that they're aware of these type of Force users being around, and maybe there was run-ins that they had in the past that, made them more sketch. But like, from this show alone, going outside of the advanced knowledge of books and anything else with the Star Wars universe, you're left questioning, like, why is he so obsessed to rush in to try to save these girls? And Endara kind of questions it for a minute, and then it's like, all right, let's go break in. And they literally break in Don't even try to like hail them or do anything else or make their presence known and have them come out. Well, they just break in and they walk, and the whole coven is just sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah, even if you don't have like the extensive Star Wars knowledge that you and I have, if this is your first introduction to Star Wars, you can see like there's nothing that they've shown you up to this point that would make you even really suspicious of these people. Like, there's no context, there's no backstory on why these people may be completely untrustworthy. They're just using the Force in a different way that doesn't align with the Jedi's beliefs, and it's not even necessarily like evil, really, and without subcontext of how else are they using the Force. It's like, it's not like evil by any means necessarily, depending on what your definition of that is, but it's just, like you said, the motivations are written very poorly. If they were legitimately being mistreated and he was that passionate about it, he would be a little more sympathetic to forego, the council's wishes. Because if you know anything about the Jedi Council, at a lot of times they can be maddeningly stubborn and set in their ways on a lot of things, but even the motivations for him to forgo the council's wishes on this are not based on anything tangible outside of like irrational emotions at that point in time, which is what he's doing. And it's just, I don't know, man. I just have a real problem with how they've executed all of this up to, especially in this episode. Like, they've done away with any goodwill that Saul could have built up in the first 6 episodes for me. Because even then I was kind of hanging on. It's like, okay, what is his big dark secret? Well, his dark secret is he's basically forcing a situation to where he's trying to kidnap these girls to.
That's basically what turns out. Like, the Jedi are trying to kidnap children,
right? But they kind of, if you look through the backstory of the Jedi, they talk like the kids are too old to join the Order. Like, they're like 9 or 10 years old. How is that too old? But
you can't be older than 4 to learn the
apparently,
Force.
which is a whole other. If you know some of the people that jokingly side with the Sith and a lot of things in Star Wars lore that talk about this with Jedi, it's like, you're proving our point about the Jedi here. But I know we kind of talked about like this show painting the Jedi in a much different light, and if they're successful at that, because there's a lot of these guys doing some shady stuff, like even to the point by the end of this episode where you get that scene where May and Osha are facing off after the building's starting to catch on fire, and you see where he deliberately like just kind of gives up trying to save May because he's so attached to Osha. Like, he's just like, all right, well, she's gone. I got to save this one. She's the one I want. She's the one I need. Like, I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing here?
Before we get too deep into kind of that ending and stuff there, because I feel like you kind of undone a lot of stuff with even more characters past that. Yeah. Like, even Anastasia, which we haven't got a whole lot on, but, in episode 3, we're showing that she is leading this witch coven, but she's trying to do and keep them together with respect. And, there's rules and regulations and everything else that must be done. And so when the Jedi, break into their compound and they're there, she instantly takes over Torben. She's in his mind, basically manipulating him to like, I can help you get out of here and I can help you get home if you want this. And then like holds him. And I get maybe it's trying to show the power of the Force and the control of the Force that the Covenant people have. But it's like she instantly took over a Jedi with barely any talking happening to kind of manipulate him and use him. And then you snap back out of it, and it's like, okay, I'll allow the children to go with you all to be tested because Osha wanted. Like, it kind of broke her down. Like, she's so wishy-washy on stuff, too. Like, well, I'm going to take over a Jedi's mind, control him, and then, okay, I'll let you take my kids privately into your spaceship to test them for the Jedi Order afterwards.
It's so maddeningly confusing because, like you said, at the end of the day, she does care about these girls, obviously, and she wants to do in their best interest, but that's two sides of the same coin here, because she was very respectful about allowing them to, go and take this test that the Jedi want them to take, but she's also wary enough that she doesn't trust them as far as she can throw them, for good reason, obviously.
Yeah, because we're told, the kids are told to lie to the Jedi when they go through their testing and stuff, and
it's just so flimsy and so, it's so frustrating to watch because it's kind of insulting to our intelligence a little bit. And that's where I get a little mad with writing. Like, you can have very basic motivations for people, and I can accept that. But when you just kind of start to insult our intelligence a little bit, that's when I start to have a real problem and start to, have a little bit of, I don't want to call it, vitriol towards something, but it's it just really makes me, just why? Why? What in your mind made you think that, and bless all the people that work on this show and have worked hard to give us something, in the Star Wars universe that we love as much as we do. But this is the first one in a while where it just kind of made me mad watching it.
Yeah, I'm only halfway through my notes now. And so when we get to the twins on the ship, I started laughing because I read this note and I'm thinking about like, did no one even think to question this when it was filming? Is that so, we got a scene between Torben and May that he needs to draw her blood to test for the midichlorians and everything else. She has a thick, long sleeve shirt on, and he does it through the long sleeve shirt.
Right.
Like, not only hygiene, everything else, if you're drawing blood, are you drawing blood through a shirt ever for any reason when it comes in? I'm not in the medical field, but even I know, like, hey, you're not taking someone's blood through a thick shirt. And it was almost like the actor didn't even want to be filming that saying, yeah, I need to take your blood to test for something. There we go. Ow. And it's like, okay, like that was just so rough. Goes that, but kind of we get into the test and we're seeing a little bit more of Indara that, we kind of knew in episode 3 that Saul had lied because they tested May and they knew that May lied. And Saul asked Indara, okay, can I try something different with Osha? And Indara's immediately like, yeah, permission. And so he lies, but she gives him a look, like she knows he's lying, and gives the look to him and stuff. And it's just like she allows it to happen, but then she berates him for passing her after all the tests are done. And, so she lets it happen, know he's lying, lets him pass her with the Jedi Council, and then kind of pokes fun and berates him for, well, you're the one who passed her when she shouldn't have because it lied. And it's like, it was just, nobody was written well in this episode at all. Like, we're thinking that this is a very big episode that we're getting a lot of revelations, what we are, but we're getting them in just the wrong way. Like, if this show was written better, and as a writer and stuff, I hate going after that, but just, this could have been a really good series, but it just wasn't written very well. Like, everything is so mismatched and wishy-washy, and it feels like every episode, every character we've looked at is a different motivation that episode. Like, everything is changing so much. And so we're going into now that after they've tested the girls, they get the blood results back, and we find out that everything exactly the same. So we're kind of getting into what is supposed to be one of the bigger revelations of the series, is that they realize, all right, these girls were created by a Force virgins. They are one consciousness split in two. So kind of maybe we're playing off the parallels that one's good, one's evil. But we have two created, but instantly Torben sees like, all right, we have what we need now to get home. So let me race back on my own to the coven and take the girls so I can go home.
And it's just like, what? Like, why is this? Like, why? Like, it's just so... It feels like almost like every episode was written by a different person.
Yeah, it's like we're not coming together in a full, connected, solid story. It's like every character's changing every single episode.
Yeah. And and that's the issue that I'm having here, because I've tried so hard to give this the benefit of the doubt. It did. I know I'm going to jump ahead in your notes a little bit, but it did give us. Oh, I'm going to jump ahead. No, let me jump, sir. It's going. it gives us something we had really looked forward to, and we kind of jokingly thought we weren't going to get it, but we wanted to see Kalnaka as a Jedi, like maybe in a lightsaber battle or something. We get it. Not in the way you'd expect, though.
Yep. Yeah, so as we kind of got to the compound here, we learned a little bit more about May from Coral is telling May, you need to go stop your sister.
Sure.
You need to get mad. That is all that we really see. So we know Coral is a much angrier person stuff, but we never hear kill or anything else for that May needs to do that. But we know May actually said, I'm going to kill my sister in episode 3. And so here we just see Coral telling her, you have to stop your sister, get mad. And then doing the whole thing where she's going to attack her and she's got to block it. Yeah, get mad. That was strange. But then we go and we see her lock her sister in and she burns a book. But now we got another new revelation that May didn't really mean to set the whole place on fire. It spread more and she's upset about it. But then it's like May has been the hardest one to really put together anything. Yeah. She is changing and different every time we see her. Her motivations, this second is this second's that. So I don't know what they were trying to do by trying to show that she didn't really mean to set the fire. Like she said to her sister, I'm going to kill you to stop you from leaving. And then we have the fire set. Oh, well, now she's upset that she started the fire and didn't mean it to be as big. Like, did she just mean to burn a book in front of the door and just have the book burn and make her sister think she's doing it? But then the whole metal and rock coven caught on fire. But that just added so much more. Like, do we really know who May is? I have a feeling at the end of all this is that May is going to join the Jedi and Osha is going to be the Acolyte, and we've all been duped and tricked, but none of it makes sense. Nothing with the twins that are at the heart and core of this story. You know, there's parallels to Luke and Leia, you know, the Force twins, and, you know, we're looking at potentially the connection to the Sith with the Virgins of maybe with... why am I forgetting his name?
Come here.
No, there are big grand Sith that we haven't really seen, but he's Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis, yeah.
Darth Plagueis. That feeling we were going to have a connection to Darth Plagueis here, but all of it is just, none of it's making sense together, especially with the twins. They don't, the stories surrounding them, but neither of them are really, and it's sad because, you know, our actresses for the kids and the adults, she's been doing really good, but these characters kind of paper thin on their motivations and changes every second.
Well, yeah, the whole thing with May is like she's destructive when she can't control her emotions. Like it's the whole thing. Like they take it back to when they were kids like that, and she's trying to, you know, attack this creature, and Osha's like, stop it. Why do you always do this when you get mad? Well, like Quirrell obviously knows this, so she's just telling her to get mad, but it's like, get mad to the point where you're going to burn everything to the ground to stop your sister? Like, is that the extreme you want to do? It's just so, like you said, it's just so frustrating as a viewer, because you want just clear direction on what they, like, you know what May wants. May wants to stay with her sister, but getting angry, losing control of your emotions and being destructive is not the way to win somebody to your side. You know what I mean? You're trying to strong arm her into staying. That's not healthy or creative for anybody. You know what I mean? But it's just, it's so aggravating to that point. Now and her setting this fire is leading to this showdown between, you know, the Jedi and the witches at this point, that now it starts getting into, in my opinion, the most absurd part about this entire episode. Really.
I'm laughing because I've already thinking in my head is, the Jedi are approaching them now to take the girls, and Quirrell instantly says, take another step and it's your last. And they take like 3 more steps and nothing happens. So she makes the threat, and Soul's like, taking a few more steps and goes. But we're to the biggest point that kind of kills Soul's character, because what he does makes no sense. Already you've got the obsessive creepiness over the kids, but now we've got May showing up to kind of confess what she's done with the fire and talk to her mom. But then her mom decides, well, I'm going to turn into the smoke monster from Lost, which I know that's in some of the book lore. But again, if you're looking, you know, we've been told most of the books are not canon, even when we have Thrawn, that we're bringing some of those books into canon, and we have some more. But if you haven't read the hundreds of novelizations out there, this is a first time you're looking and seeing someone turn into smoke in the Star Wars universe. Like, wait, why is she turning into smoke? She's turning May into smoke. Oh, well, because she's turning into smoke, Soul pulls out his lightsaber and stabs the smoke, which somehow she's still there, even though she is completely turned into smoke. It's able to stab and kill her. But then we get one final, wish. So, she's trying to potentially escape or do something, and then Soul stabs her, and she's like, well, you know I was going to let Osha go with you, right?
Like, what? Oh, here, Mr. Man who killed me, take my daughter, please. Are you kidding me?
And yeah, we've been told about the Jedi don't act. They don't attack
Yes.
unarmed people, which maybe that stemmed from this incident or something. But Soul was so insanely quick to act and stab and attack. Like they were already kind of squaring off to potentially battle, but no one had really made a move yet other than her turning into smoke and he stabbed her.
Can I say something completely off the wall that would legitimately cause me to throw my TV out my window?
Absolutely not.
Okay, then I'll keep it to myself. But no, if Soul winds up being this Darth Plagueis character, I'm going to throw my TV out the window.
I didn't even think about that. And I am going to leave this podcast and walk out of this room, and I'm never going to be seen again.
But does it kind of feels like that's going to be the last thread of this? Like the whole who was Kamir's initial master. If it's Soul, I'm just gonna.
If they turn him to the dark side or something, yeah, that's gonna be crazy.
I'm gonna throw my TV out the window. That's exactly what's gonna happen. But yeah, like he attacks this unarmed person who, I get it, they're kind of facing off with here or whatever, and maybe in his brain, he doesn't understand what turning to the smoke means, and he's trying to turn one of the kids into smoke, and he feels like this is his way of defending. It's twisted in all of the worst possible ways for your motivation to kill someone.
But the thing is, he didn't even care about May. That's the problem with all of this is he didn't care about May. He cared because that was May that showed up, right? Correct. Not Osha. So why is he trying to defend? Like Osha has been kind of his main obsession. So he's shown that he didn't really care about May. So why did he kill her mom?
Well, his whole obsession this entire time was getting both girls out, even though he felt like he was going to take Osha as his Padawan. I think he still wanted to get both twins out. Because he knew that to get Osha, he would probably need May. But we're putting pieces together ourselves here. They're not fleshing this out for us. And that's part of my big problem with this. And God, thank God we got one episode left of this. And I hate saying that because I've tried really hard. Like, okay, maybe if there's something we're not seeing that they're going to fill in these last two episodes, we're like, this might save it enough to where it's at least passable. And there was just so much that they swung and missed on in this episode that kind of unravels any goodwill they could have built up for me. And it's mind-numbing. And I hate talking about a show like this, but it's just, this is the product of what we're being given. Like, here's a story, interpret it as you will.
And it did give us kind of what we all expected, that May saw the Jedi kill. In the end, it was her mom. So that kind of gets her motivation of why she hates the Jedi even more. But up to that point, it seemed like her hate of the Jedi was simply because her mom or Quarrel or someone told her to. But now she has like true motivations on why she would hate the Jedi, of seeing Soul kill her mom, but it's still like just so paper thin with her character.
Why did it take so long for this to be revealed, though?
Yeah, it shouldn't have been episode 7.
She could have revealed this like, hey, Soul's the one that killed our mother, right? Or did he not tell you that? Like, how are we finding this out in episode 7? Like, that's part of the issue that I've had with this overall narrative story. It's drama for the sake of drama, but like, what? Like May's known this entire time. Like, why has she not? When he had May on the ship and she was with him, why did they not talk about it then? They kind of danced around it, but like, obviously we know this is what she knows, but why has she not been like, I have no trust in you, you killed my mother? Like that should have been revealed like way.
Yeah, it should not have been episode 7 of it. When we initially did this first flashback in 3, now we're getting the revelation in 7, right before the finale in 8. Yeah. This should have been maybe give an episode or 2 in between with it going, maybe 5 or 6 being it, maybe 5. It shouldn't have been episode 7 because it more frustrates us to where's this show going, which we're going to get to talk about that here in the end because, where the episodes we're at in the episode now is the battle has started and we learn that, Quarrel attacks Soul and is attacking them, but Soul is now got a conscience and he doesn't want to fight Quarrel at all, which I can, you're getting that he's feeling bad about doing it, but everything that he's done has been abrasive and just going after it without thinking. And now after he's killed somebody, he's wants to think about how horrible it is and not do it. But then we get more smoke monstery stuff. All the Coven have disappeared. And what you talked about, we got Kaunaka has shown up and he's being controlled by the Coven. So we get, which was kind of humorous in a bad way, that we see all the Coven sisters sitting there swaying, chanting, knowing that, we're fighting Kaunaka. And the fight sequence with Kaunaka between Torben, Soul, and Kaunaka was fun.
It was good.
but it also had a lot of issues. So, how did Torben get the cuts on his face?
Good question.
So, Tobin ends up scarred and beaten and cut up, but we never see how that happens. He's thrown with Soul, but he lands on a table and rolls off. And then Kaunaka picks him up and holds him against a wall. When he picks him up off the ground, there's no cuts. When he slams him against a wall, there's multiple cuts on his face. When he gets thrown down again, the cuts look a little worse. And then when he's on the ship later, the cuts are even worse. There is nothing that shows that he got hit with rocks, that Kaunaka scratched him, or did he? There was nothing that showed how he would have. Soul walked away scot-free. There was no scratches or anything on him, but somehow Torben, unbeknownst to us, got cuts all over his face.
It's so silly. Like, the fight itself was fine. It was good, but there were so many misfires and missteps in this that it's hard to overlook. And that's what I kind of mean by it, like, insulting our intelligence a little bit, because you literally just broke down, like, why is he scarred now? Like, nobody really knows, like, what actually caused it to happen. It's so it's so frustrating, and I kind of want to just bang my head against the wall talking about it. And it's unfortunate because we don't like to. I don't think either one of us take any joy in being negative about something.
I absolutely hate that I'm having this many issues with the show.
This is kind of out of character for. I know some people that watch this jokingly say we're a little too optimistic sometimes, but like when it's this ridiculous, I feel like we kind of have to. You know what I mean? Because this is. I hate paralleling the two, but it's like Madam Web levels of bad writing.
It is kind of Madam Web. It's like it's Madam Web level.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
It's just so absurd. There's so many things that are insulting to your intelligence if you're paying attention to story and things like that. Where you look, there's a lot of things we both look at things similarly, like where we look for character motivations. Is the character motivation there? It may not necessarily always be a way that we would think of something for somebody, but we're not writing it. We're taking and interpreting things that people are writing and presenting to us, and just kind of like analyzing it at that point. And we can. I jokingly say the worst thing you could do about a show is fantasy write it before you watch it, because this is someone else's interpretation of a story, right? It's not ours. So if we cared so much about it, we would write it completely different, I think.
Yep.
But it's just an interpretation of something that somebody's giving us. And it's just, I feel like this episode really was just like a big middle finger to us as somebody who's breaking down every episode. And it's just like, you care so much about this, let's just throw everything against the wall to see what sticks, and none of it does.
Yeah, so we're not done yet with kind of the ridiculousness of it, because Indara shows up to save the day, and she uses, her immense force powers to break the hold on Kaunaka.
And the Coven's gone.
But all the Coven die from her breaking the hold. We saw Anastasia use it on Torben and release it and be fine. We see him turn into smoke monsters, but because I guess a group of them are chanting and doing it together to control one Wookiee, that another Force user breaking it will cause them all, and they just fall over dead. Like, it's like, huh? Like, in the most ridiculous way.
It's that absurd.
It's just absurd. Like, and it's kind of. And then we kind of meet up with Soul. Soul's raced after the kids. And as you mentioned earlier, he sees them just yelling at each other, and he's just standing there, doesn't say anything, and the stuff starts to fall. So he uses his powers to try to, hold up the platforms. And about 5 seconds later, he's like, you know what? And he lets May fall. And he saves Osha, which, again, the platforms are far away from the cliff that he was standing on. And it looks he releases his powers and then reaches out to grab her, where she's miraculously over here. Like, we didn't see a force pull. We didn't see anything that she's miraculously close enough over to the ledge that he can pull her up. But we're left with still no answers to what happened to May afterwards. We see her fall, but how did she survive? How did she end up with Khmer? How did she end up under control of Khmer? Why did the order in which the Jedi were being killed by May happen? Because now we know Soul is the main one. Torben was there and fought, but he wasn't exactly responsible. And Dara didn't show up really to fight until after the end. Kaunaka didn't do anything but fight the Jedi. Soul is really the only one that did something directly to affect May, and he's the one that's still alive and was the last one, which you can say, well, I'm going to make him suffer and be the last one, but the motivations behind it, maybe it was Kamir who did it, but like, why didn't we get a connection to Kamir? Why didn't we see how Kamir ended?
Kamir in this episode.
How did May leave this planet and go somewhere else? How did Kamir get to the planet? If he did, to get, like, there was no connections, no anything to Kamir, and that's kind of past the twins. He's the other big mystery.
I'm going to say something really toxic right now. Guess what? We've got an 8th episode, Brad. So that's how we're gonna. This is gonna be what episode 8 is gonna be, isn't it? Yeah, I know, right? But this is what episode 8's got to be, right? They got to close that loop eventually, right? Because you gotta. That's literally the only thing we can't figure out now is what happened with her. Like, is that gonna be like the first half of this last episode? It's gonna be 30 minutes. It's gonna be 20 minutes of explaining how May ended up at the bottom of this rubble to being saved by Kamir and her connection to that.
There's too much to wrap up in a 30-minute episode because, like I said, to finish off kind of our recap is up because I've almost broke everything down because almost everything has had a problem that needed to be talked about. So we kind of go back to the ship with Osha and everyone's there. Of course, we got Torben's face is looking worse now. And after everything, Indara decides, we're going to cover everything up. We're going to tell the council that May was behind it. We're going to tell Osha May was behind it. But how did we get from that to where we were? So, like, this took place 16 years before kind of where we were at the present day with it. How did Torben go from being an apprentice who whined all the time, just wanted to leave, didn't listen to his master, was scarred, to a master who has been meditating for 10 years of those 16 years in his like meditative bubble? How did we get there where he's just so quickly to drink the poison and kill himself in front of May? Like, he didn't really do it. Like, he ran off to try to take the girls because he wanted to go home, but we don't have the motivation. Like, he knows that they were responsible for the coven and for people killing, but he directly didn't do a whole lot. But he just instantly took the poison and like killed himself. Like, his character is overall very thin.
And this is why we had a problem with this episode as much as we have. Because if you start to look at things in totality, a lot of stuff that's led up to this has meant next to nothing, or has just left us with even more questions, which is not how you want to tell a story. Yeah. Like, you want to be able to wrap up these questions and give us clearly defined reasons why these characters that you've met at the beginning are doing what they're doing, right? And we're left with even more questions now that you have essentially one episode that God knows if we're going to get a season 2 at this point, because one, it's not being reviewed very well for obvious reasons, but at the same time, there's not a coherent plot. There's just not. Like, they're trying, but I think they're just going about it like so in such a way that doesn't logically make a ton of sense. Because if you're watching it like we are and breaking it down week by week in a vacuum, there's the opportunities for this to really dive into what each of these characters are about. And we're in the penultimate episode of the season. We're left with more questions than we've had since we've had from the beginning of the series, which is a problem.
Yep. And Carrie-Anne Moss was such a waste. Now that we've only got one left, and that might be potentially last time we see her, like, she got a great fight sequence to open up the series. Brilliant. Like, the first 2 episodes were really fun, enjoyable. I really liked as we were going into the mystery and everything else, and it just kind of fell apart since then. And the flashbacks we've gotten with her, she's really been doing nothing. She's the master telling people what to do, but no one's listening to her. They're doing their own thing.
It's a problem.
And then, of course, we've talked about how Soul, his character, has been completely destroyed because he turned into an obsessive, weird, creepy kind of guy who murdered somebody. And I mean, I get, maybe they are trying to show us the bad parts of the Jedi and that they're not as good, but it just wasn't done in a good way. I can get behind something like that.
It's an interesting premise.
But nothing is really connecting very well to tie these characters together. And then even with Kaunaka, did we just have a Jedi Wookiee for this one fight scene? Because he did nothing through this whole thing. He was just in the background. Like I said, when they were training the girls, testing the girls, he was outside working on stuff. when they're doing the fighting battles, he was in the ship with Endara, jumped down to try to help, but it got taken over. Yeah, he fought his own Jedi, but he hurt no one other than Tobin, which, again, mystery injuries. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't hurt anybody. He wasn't responsible for what they did, but he put himself into isolation after that. Like, the motivations of these characters and where they are and where the story has been, it just doesn't match up. And then even with our Jedi Council and we've got the mystery of Khmer and who his master is and, you know, what we're doing with our lightsaber woman, which I've already forgot her name because there's so much bad stuff that I've thought that I've already forgot her name. What's going on with her? Like, we've set up maybe some mystery behind her that Khmer was her apprentice. We got nothing on her. Nothing more in this episode on her. Nothing more on Khmer. Like, we're left with so many questions, but not in a good way. Like, stuff has just been so kind of poorly laid out that nothing is really connecting, and we're just going to have a mashup of things to wrap this up in episode 8. And I said, there's very few things that I dislike, and it sometimes can be maybe a little too generous or maybe a little too harsh on things, but it's just been poorly put together. Like, the whole premise of this show could be very good.
Yes.
If it was put together right. But this just looks like stuff that was thrown and slapped together without a care of how they actually connected to each other.
Yeah, the premise is fantastic. Like, I love the deep dive into, like, the origins of the Sith, and thank you for throwing those notes out. I'm so glad to be done with this episode and this review at this point. And that's part of our frustration with it is, like, the premise of it alone. Very exciting. I remember when we saw them talking about this show and what it was going to be when they announced it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's a different look at the Jedi that we've, viewed in one particular light for all this time, but maybe they're not always as altruistic as we think they are. Great premise, but they have not stuck the landing on virtually anything in this so far. And we've tried. We've tried to give them the opportunity to kind of like, okay, let's see where we're going. And now we're at the next to last episode, and we got what we just got in episode 7. We're like, no, that's just a miss. It's a big miss, and it's unfortunate because the potential was there, and it even started out, like you said, as promising. We were very optimistic after the first couple episodes. They're like, all right, we're in for something here, and then it just kind of fell off a cliff and then kind of came up a little bit and then right back off the cliff again. And it's so frustrating because there are some bright spots in this series, like Manny Jacinto as Khmer, fantastic. Mm-hmm. I've really enjoyed what he's done so far. And it's not enough to save the show.
But it's been he's had past his episode with Osha, he had 5 minutes, 10 minutes of screen time.
If that.
Up into that episode where he got 10, 15s. But I mean, yeah, there's still so much mystery behind, this is called the Acolyte. So we think we're going to be learning more about the Sith, and it's been about the twins, which one of them is going to, is his Acolyte, and is it going to finish off that way? But there's been no real setup. Like, we still don't really care about Osha. We don't care about any of these characters at this point. Like, You've broken the character of just about all of them, and May and Osha, everybody's with you. Everybody's like, this episode they're this way, the next episode that way. They're different, and like just so much wasted potential. And yeah, this I felt did more harm than good. Like, we got the answers we were waiting for, but in such a bad way and way too late in the season.
Yeah. 2 episodes earlier, we'd probably be having a different conversation because there's times to kind of move forward, right? Because now you're coming back up into the modern part of the story, right? And up to date, at least in real time, for the story that they're trying to tell. And I don't know how they're going to finish it. I really don't. And it's unfortunate because we really wanted to give this a full opportunity, and obviously we're going to review the last episode as well next week because it's the season finale, maybe series finale, we still don't know. I'd be surprised at this point if it got a second season, just based on the feedback that it's getting for stuff, but we'll see. But it's only going to be a 35-40 minute episode, I think, at most, and it's just not enough time to really do clean up and finish this in a way that's really digestible. And We'll give our final thoughts on that episode next week, but I'm kind of ready for this season to be done at this point. It really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I hate that.
Yeah, because normally the second to last episode of the season, they're setting up your final conflict to get to your final resolutions and get you to want to turn into the finale. This actually made me almost not care about turning into the final episode. Like, I'm not trying to hate. There's a lot of people who are hating on it for all the wrong reasons, because they think it's progressive or they're bringing their political or social. Just stop that stuff. We're looking at it as core basis storytelling, overall just feeling of how it is, and it's just not been told well. In the end, whatever you think they're trying to tell you from a political, social state, doesn't matter. It's just not a well-written story.
Agreed. And thankfully, that is the end of our review for this episode. You can check out The Acolyte on Disney+, all 7 episodes, with the season finale airing this week. As this episode drops, we will be reviewing that finale next week, and thankfully put this show in the rearview mirror as we move on to bigger and better things. But now, I want to transition into our movie review of the week. We have Fly Me to the Moon, so it's starring Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson in kind of a fun telling of the story of the moon landing, right? So this takes place in the 60s with the NASA space program and the race with the Russians to get, a rocket to the moon, be the first one to land on the moon. So you pick up with Channing Tatum, who is the launch director at NASA, working on the space program. He has some history there, and Scarlett Johansson comes in as this marketing genius whose job is to sell the moon and sell the space program, and the way to get the funding they need to finish what is essentially JFK's vision and goal in his famous speech in 61 to get a ship on the moon by the end of the decade. So that's kind of the premise of where the story really kicks off.
Yeah, and I'm so glad we got a movie like this with this episode that we recorded, The Acolyte, because it was a good palate cleanser. Absolutely. This is a fun date night, or just kind of if you want to be transported to another time period for a couple hours. Like, it was silly at times, it was touching at times, but I had a lot of fun with it. I've said it before, I'm a sucker for space stuff, so give me any series or movie or something set in space and I'm gonna be there to watch it. And this movie kind of didn't have a whole lot of marketing, but I think I saw one trailer, and that was about it. And there wasn't a whole lot of stuff seen before it. And I was kind of surprised after the movie was over, looking it up, that it was a $100 million production. Like, it looked fantastic. The special effects were great. The set designs and everything great. But you didn't expect kind of this kind of silly, quirky, fun type of movie to be a $100 million movie. Agreed. And because it's unfortunate that even though it's a good movie, and we're going to talk about it more here, that it's probably not going to make back its budget because it came out in the middle of summer. You got Deadpool and Wolverine coming up. It's not something you're going to have people flocking to, but it is a movie I feel like you should go see. It is so well acted. Scarlett Johansson is so fun. She goes between a bunch of different accents that she pulls off so well. But I even said to you after the movie with Scarlett and Channing together that, because, Channing was attached to do a Gambit movie for so long, and we're big X-Men and Gambit, and especially with an accent, which she would mix it up a little bit, that she did. If she was never Black Widow and he got a chance to be Gambit, that her as Rogue and him as Gambit would have been, I mean, it's kind of off topic with the film here, but they had such a great dynamic together, and she did the voices and stuff so great. And then there's reason behind she's kind of faking it, because there is a deeper story behind her character that all is not as it seems, because she's kind of a shyster. Like, we start off as her going to Ford to try to help them sell the Mustang, and it's like, well, you're adding seatbelts. Why are we advertising about the seatbelts? Like, we think that's going to come, here in the future, so we're just throwing them in. She's, got a fake pregnancy going on and is selling them the family aspect about, well, your wife, once they know that it's got seatbelts, she's going to want you to buy that Mustang. And she does such a good job of kind of being that snake oil salesman marketing person. And, when we finally get to NASA and we're unraveling everything there, it's just so much fun. Like, they play off of each other so well. But I even got even a little more respect for Channing as an actor after this movie, because I think he did it really well. He's got some kind of dramatic things behind his character's story, but he plays off of her so well. And even like Ray Romano was great in his little bit of role. Like, he fit that time period and that character so well, but he even gave some heart and emotion to this story.
Agreed. And another really bright spot for me was Woody Harrelson. So Woody Harrelson plays the government agent in this movie. So a little spoiler-ishy, but the big premise of the film is the government's involvement in this, and with it being Richard Nixon in office at the time, of to ensure that everything goes well with this moon landing and there's no like visual issues with it as well, they pay to stage the whole Project Artemis, right? That it's famous for, being the fake moon landing or whatever. That it plays into a lot of the conspiracy theory stuff that's floated out about the moon landing. Is it real? Is it fake? Well, they play into that in this movie, and Woody Harrelson is having them basically set up a fake top secret staged recording of the moon landing just in case, the cameras that they want to have on the spaceship land on the moon and can't record properly. They still want the the world to see that, this moon landing has happened and we've beat the Russians. So, a little politicized and like, you don't fall under the Russians don't win and we're all living in a communist, society and yay America and America wins and, the democratic way wins out or whatever. But it's a fun way of playing into that conspiracy theory that may or may not be real, right? And it's been a topic of conversation our entire lives as well. But it plays a big hand into this film that they are still trying to get all the funding they need to get the project out and actually physically land on the moon. But it also plays into the whole conspiracy theory thing of you may still make it, but we're going to make sure they know you made it one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. Woody he stole every scene he was in. Like Absolutely. He playing this kind of shisty government agent that you got the mystery around. He just looked like he was having the time of his life filming Absolutely. This because he just got to be kind of coy and snarky and like he was having so much fun even at the very end. Like you could tell how much fun he was having, but he was a big high point for this film because even though he wasn't in it that much, every time he was on scene, it was just so good, so entertaining. But yeah, the movie overall, it does a good job of opening up multiple threads and multiple storylines from the past, the present, the future, and even a slight bit of, I guess, mystery with it all. But it pays off everything so well. It's well acted. Like I said, visually, I knew it had to have some money behind it because it had some better special effects than some of our blockbusters that we've had, like all the rocket scenes and flying scenes and other stuff. It looked fantastic. I couldn't really point out maybe just one scene that it looked like CGI was sticking out quite a bit, but it looked fantastic and it looked like that time period. Like it transported you to the 60s for these couple hours. Everybody playing off each other so well. There really wasn't anybody who felt out of place. Like everything just fits so well. Even some of the more silly slapstick humor and stuff that happened with the cat. It ended up playing a big part in the movie, but they were just, there's a black cat. That means bad luck. Get it! And it was almost like cartoon chase scenes of tracking down that cat.
Yeah, the humor in it was very smartly written, I think. And it, your two main stars in Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson do have really great chemistry in this film, like you said. Very smart dialogue between the two. Scarlett Johansson is incredibly charming as a person to begin with, but she didn't really have to stretch too far for that in this role. But it was a lot of fun. They play off a couple conspiracy theories in this movie that I think was fun because the whole not only talking about the moon landing but talking about aliens a little bit too. Like, oh yeah, you think that's wild? There's this place out in Nevada where we test some spacecraft on some stuff that may or may not be true. We've kind of come out and admitted that our government said that was true, but it plays a lot of that fun dynamic too. And it's like you said, it very much felt like we were transported into the 60s in a way that felt believable for and accurate to a point for the time that they were living in, right? And just the way that characters spoke and the way that, you have Channing Tatum, who's this, you come to find out he's a little bit spoilery here, that he's like a former, pilot and things, flew some missions in Korea, and he was a choice to be a shoo-in that everybody thought was going to be one of these astronauts that made their way, and for different reasons he couldn't, and that's why he still chose to be a part of NASA and worked his way up to a launch director. And it was definitely giving some good solid depth to these characters, and they played their roles all very well. Like I wound up enjoying this movie a lot more than I thought I would. And I'm glad we made the decision to choose this one to review this week because I had a feeling it was going to be better than what we'd seen. Because like you said, the marketing on this film was terrible. Like, it really was.
Yeah,
like, there
didn't
wasn't
see much about it.
It got lost in the shuffle of so many other things that are coming out around this time, but it's a really fun movie that I think a lot of people will get enjoyment out of. It may wind up being a bigger hit when it moves to streaming just because of the time frame that it's been released in, but I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way with this one as with the Horizon American saga. If this released more in the fall or winter, maybe even early spring, it probably would have a bigger box office run because you got Deadpool and Wolverine in 2 weeks. You got Twisters out next week. Like, it's going to probably fall by the wayside because, Twisters may be a fun action, which I'm really looking forward to, but that might be a date night movie that people go to for the summer blockbuster silly. This is not exactly, it's got the budget of a big summer film, but it's a smaller, more quaint, period piece that is, really funny. Like I said, could be a good date night movie, could just be a good movie that you need a palate cleanser. These are one of those palate cleansers that it's kind of a smaller film with a big budget that just kind of lets you reset, and it's not superheroes, it's not this. It's an original kind of smaller film. Like, even though we've touched on, the Apollo 11 and 10, all those missions a lot before, it's still one of those smaller films I think really deserves to be seen. Like, everybody acts so well. The story is done so well. Everything is smooth and goes through its paces. Like we had with the Acolyte.
Much more cohesive storytelling, yes.
Everything was cohesive. You got threads open that made sense. They paid off in the end. And there was a lot of humor. Like, I really loved how, Scarlett Johansson hired some actors for some of them because we got Ray Romano gets a great, like, the TV turns like he's got my name. He's got my job. Like, what?
Because they were, for context, when she comes in to try to sell NASA, they are not having her at the beginning.
Don't want to talk to her.
She's like, all right, you don't want to talk and do these media things to help get it? I'm going to get it either way. I'm going to hire these people to play you. My favorite was the one that she hired to play Channing Tatum's character. And he says, she's got notes on some of the stuff. I flew X number of missions in Korea. And he was like, I flew 52 missions in Korea. And the guy just behind him in the funniest way possible, I flew 52 missions in Korea. Like, just being like an actor in that, it was so funny.
And then bringing in like the actual advertisements and things that we've seen with Tang and the Omega watches and everything
Colgate
else,
toothpaste and all
seeing
that stuff.
the looms and seeing all that play out in his office in a tongue-in-cheek funny way between them as we're getting their dynamic and their relationship building at that scene. Like, everything happened kind of at the right point in the movie. Like, nothing felt out of place. Everything developed between the overall story to their relationship and all the characters. Like, everything just went through really smoothly and really great. Like, there was nothing I could say that I really didn't like about the movie. Like, in the end, it's not something that's going to win a bunch of Oscars. Like, I think the performances are great, but it's not like...
It's not going to win awards.
It's not one of those big movies to win awards, but it's something that should be watched and seen because it's great performances. It's a great little movie. Like I said, it's $100 million movie. Should it have been $100 million? That's probably a question to have on that, but it's a great little film.
I really enjoyed it too. It's like a romantic comedy, very smartly written. Like, I think,
and had more touching
historical aspect to it. Yeah. Because there are some heartfelt moments in there about, you really feel for these characters and some of the stuff that they're going through and how much they're passionate about what they do and why they work as hard as they do. And it's a lot of fun. Like I said, very smart writing, much better than the Acolyte. I will give it that. So, like, it was, like you said, the perfect palate cleanser for what we had to digest with our TV review. But this is one that I think it'll do a little bit better when it makes its way to streaming. I really do, because you said it is mixed in between, like, you have the family films that are doing gangbusters at the box office right now with Inside Out 2 and Despicable Me 4, and then you've got Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine coming out right after. That's kind of sandwiched in between some bigger films that it's not going to get as much as it should. Truth be told, when we went to the theater, there may have been 10 people in the theater, like, with us, like in our bottom section. There were people sitting in the dining seats that were pretty full, which probably made sense. Like you said, it's a perfect, like, date night type film. So people were going to probably get dinner and a movie to watch that together. Great date night film. Smart, like I said, smart written, very funny. It was funnier than I thought it was going to be, but and that's a lot to do with how well the dialogue was written, because there were moments that we were legitimately, like, cracking up at.
Yeah, I've been laughing and smiling while you're talking, because I don't know why, but the tour guide popped up in my head about
Ken,
his just little touches of sprinkling him in there of what he says. Even there was a little bit of a touching moment with him too, but he was very funny, and the stuff that he did of taking, kind of, we're introduced to him by Scarlett Johansson, her assistant, who does a lot of the sketches and ideas for her, which she even got a little bit of a storyline, even though she's kind of a side, kind of a throwaway character in ways. She got some really touching and good moments and some evolution in her character. But we're introduced to, he's taking them on the tour, and they stop by, this is the biggest single story building in the world. And, Scarlett's like, oh, when do we go in? It's like, oh no, that's top secret. You got to have clearance like mine to go in there. And she just yoinks his badge and walks right in.
He's like,
but like I said, everybody played their characters so well. Everyone had some great moments. Even we got some of the more, nerdy, geeky characters that I relate to with those guys a lot. They got to have a little bit of an evolution and some fun stuff about, needing some parts to help fix something, and they got to go do something. And it also showed just how good Scarlett Johansson was to manipulate and change and do scenes. But like I said, she got a big story arc that, out from being this great marketing woman, she has a past, and she has all the stuff that we got to explore and unravel. And we kind of got a Top Gun moment too towards the end of getting to take her in planes and everything else and seeing those reactions. And that was a funny, expected scene, but they both played it so well that you just had to laugh at, are you all right? No, yeah, I'm okay. She's got her eyes closed.
Her eyes open. I love that. Yeah, it was, like I said, smartly written. The dialogue was great. Told stories in a logical way that made sense, and that's really all we ask for, right? It's a good movie. Like you said, it's not going to be on anybody's top 10 movies at the end of the year, but it's still one that I feel like a lot of people would get a lot of enjoyment out of.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for a good date night film to take your significant other out to, that's a good one. That's just as good a one as any as I can find that's come out so far this year.
And if you're like me, that enjoy space and anything space related, it gives you plenty of good go-to too. So even if you're not with someone, or you want to go on your own and you just want to be transported in a period piece or something, related to Apollo missions or space, I think it works on so many levels for so many different people. It's a fun, lighthearted comedy with some touching, dramatic moments. Well acted, well directed, beautiful to look at. You felt like you were in the 60s. It was such a good film, and I can't recommend enough that you go out to theaters, see Fly Me to the Moon. But I'm like you, that I have a feeling this is one that's going to kind of slow build and grow after it's been released at home. Agreed. And more people have time to kind of check it out on streaming or purchase on demand. It's kind of going to grow over time because it deserves to be seen, but it probably didn't deserve or need to be released right in the middle of the summer blockbuster season, because it's not going to make back that $100 million budget. I think we were looking at the box office, or I was looking at it. I think it was looking like a $10 million. Which isn't bad, but on a $100 million film, it's not going to make that much. And you got Twisters, you got Deadpool and Wolverine. It's probably not going to have a great staying power.
For the quality of the cast that it has and the names that are attached to it, it's definitely going to underperform, which is disappointing. But I have a feeling that as it comes out later, more people are going to find that film and appreciate it more later. I agree.
Yep. Yeah, so Fly Me to the Moon is in theaters right now. Can't recommend checking out enough. It is a great, funny, entertaining couple hours that just kind of flew by. I was just so enthralled with what they were doing the entire time. It's well worth the time to check it out.
Agreed.
So coming up next week, so we have one of the big summer blockbuster movies. If you watch our Guilty Pleasure episode, you know how we felt about the original Twister. If you haven't watched that episode, stop right now, go watch it. We'll wait for you. But Twisters, we have which it kind of had a weird way of coming out, that originally it was pinned as going to be a sequel, but now it looks like it's not exactly tied, but it is. It looks very similar to the original. Almost looks like a remake in a way, but sure. It's getting good buzz already, but we cannot wait to check out Twisters. We actually get a little bit of an early screening on this one to check it out. I can't wait to see it.
Very excited to check that one out. We're checking it out a day earlier than we normally go to the theaters, which is exciting, but definitely one of our most anticipated films of the year coming into it, and it's finally here. So the next couple weeks, I think, are going to be really exciting theaters-wise for us. But definitely excited to check Twisters out.
Yeah. On streaming, so we have Young Woman in the Sea. This is a Daisy Ridley period piece that looks really good, and there's been some good buzz behind it. Kind of had a limited theatrical release, and it looks like it's skipping over the normal rent and sale, and it's going on Disney Plus. So July 19th, you'll be able to watch The Young Woman in the Sea on Disney Plus. I am really looking forward to checking that one out. That's kind of in the mess of all the movies that have been coming out lately. That one kind of was flew under the radar, but I'm really looking forward to check that out because I've heard Daisy has a really good performance in it, and it's a solid film overall.
For sure. She's an underrated actress who gets a lot of grief for her time in Star Wars. Because like we say, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. Check out our review a little earlier in this episode for The Acolyte to see how we felt about that. But overall, a fantastic actress in her own right that I'm excited to check that one out too.
Yep. And as we hinted earlier with our news story on Horizon American Saga Chapter 1, it's coming on demand on July 16th, so you're going to be able to check it out. They mentioned that they're doing this, so maybe we can get more people watching it at home while it's still in theaters and see how it goes for Chapter 2. So more than likely, to be honest, I'm probably not going to be able to check it out until it's on demand here because of Twisters and everything else going on, and we got Deadpool and Wolverine. There's just not time to get out to see it. But I do want to check it out. Like, I love Kevin Costner. I grew up on his movies. Again, Guilty Pleasure episode.
We had a couple of them.
He's in there multiple times.
Yeah, we had a couple.
And we're not a hater on him. It just I've heard great things about the movie. It just I feel it was bad timing for when they released it.
Agreed.
Also on July 19th, we have Thelma. So this is another little movie that's kind of gone under the radar. I've heard decent things about it, but it's like a 90-year-old woman who gets scammed on the phone and she goes out for revenge. It looks really funny.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to check that out on demand.
Yeah, that one had me cracking up at the trailer at the premise of it. And I'm like, okay, I have to at least give this a viewing just to see how absurd it could be, but looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. And one series that we've been looking forward to, we found out that it's the final season has been split into 3 parts. So the first part of season 6 for Cobra Kai drops on Netflix on July 18th. Really looking forward to check that out and see how they wrap up these series. We both love the Karate Kid growing up, and this has been such a fun, quirky, silly, over-the-top kind of series bringing it back, which I'm surprised it got 6 seasons just because in the world of remake, and especially Netflix usually doesn't let things go on that long. And this has got 6 seasons, 3 parts. It's going into next year. I can't wait to see how this final season begins.
I've been waiting on this, I feel like, forever, because this is one of those shows that when it comes out, I will binge the entire season in a day. So the fact that they're breaking this up into 3 parts is exciting, and I believe it's supposed to play into the movie that's coming out next year. That's
potentially
a little spoiler, going to have Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio to kind of bring everything together. Feels like it's working around the World Karate Championships and not just the All Valley, so it's going to branch out a little more and lead into that final movie to kind of close the chapter on everything related to here. But yes, Cobra Kai has been one that I've been looking forward to all year, and it's finally here, the first part of season 6, and I'm so excited to check it out.
July 18th on Netflix. Also on July 18th, over on Max, we have the Kite Man spinoff. So if you haven't watched the Harley Quinn animated series, it's for adults. It's not meant for kids. Kite Man as well. That he came from the Harley Quinn series, another kind of oddball DC character is getting his own spinoff. It's going to be for adults too. So it's going to be interesting to check that out. I'm a little bit behind on Harley Quinn. And so I need to kind of finish that up probably before I jump into Kite Man there.
Yeah, you definitely should, but definitely one geared towards adults. Very vulgar, very violent, very funny too. And Kaylee Cuoco as Harley Quinn, hilarious because if you've seen her, if you only know her as Penny on Big Bang Theory, she definitely jumps into the role of Harley Quinn very hardcore.
Like Alan Tudyk is Clayface in there. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic as well. So excited to check that one out too. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. We've had a lot of fun talking about Fly Me to the Moon and just kind of sharing our frustrations with The Acolyte. But coming up, we do have the season finale of The Acolyte. So we were reviewing episode 8, talking about that here, putting that show to rest finally. And we're also going to be reviewing Twisters. Very much looking forward to that film too. Like we said at the beginning of the show, check out our merch store, check out our giveaway. Sign up, do what you need to do to get in the running to get your free t-shirt and gift card. We're excited for that. You do have until August the 9th. We'll say that at the beginning of our next episode as well, but you do have until August 9th to get your entry in. We'll be drawing in for the episode following that. But until next time, I'm Josh. He is Brad, and we will see you next week.